want to welcome Rick and Mary for our discussion on philanthropic advising, trends, challenges, things that they're seeing in the marketplace that they can share with you. It is wonderful to talk with both of you. I'm going to start out by saying, you both are CAPS, our Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. I just got my designation. It's the first one I got from the college, which is so exciting. But I really want to actually talk to you about, you've got this experience. Let's go to trends. Now, one of the things that everybody's talking about in the trends is Mackenzie Scott's writing checks everywhere. But the fact is, separate from her, we are seeing women do more in philanthropy. I think one of the statistics is $30 trillion is going to transfer, this wealth transfer to women over the next 10 years. Tell me a little bit about, from your perspectives, are we serving women the same way, or how would we serve women going forward as this wealth transfer occurs? Because they seem to give differently than men. Either one of you could start.
Just around statistics, 90% of women will be in sole control of money at some time in their lives. And in my experience with women, they are very philanthropic. They do want to help. They are also very attuned to their communities around them and helping other people. But they're also concerned about obviously saving enough for retirement and so on. So they do want to give back. They give back in time, treasure, talent, and ways like that. But they also, they just don't know how to make an impact sometimes. So they lean on places like a community foundation to make that happen. So they do want to make a difference, and they are looking for their advisors to help open the door for that discussion.
So women in philanthropy, 94% of C-suite females are former college or high school athletes. And you think about that and you say, all right, that means they're proven leaders. And so let's take the fact that research shows that they're more philanthropic. So your question is, are we serving them? No, I don't think we are. I think there's much more to be done. $30 trillion is a lot of money, yes. Right? That's a lot of money. So how are we going to be able to serve those women? They're already proven leaders. They're already proven that they want to impact society. They're proven that they have causes that are important to them. And where do we belong? What seat are we taking at the table? How often? And who are we bringing in that's needed? And I think those are questions that we have to start thinking about in order to serve them better.
I think research has shown that 80% of women who inherit money from their spouse change their advisor in the first year. So when you think about that, it sort of gets back, Mary, to what you're saying is like, okay, we're not serving them. Obviously, something's happening, and then we're going to this. Both of you, I'm sure, work with women right now. So tell me how you approach this so that people listening can get a sense of folks who are successful at this and working with this very important group of individuals that are going to, I think, have an outsized impact on philanthropy in the future.
Another statistic related to women is 9 out of 10 want to make some sort of a strong impact, but they don't know how. So it goes back to what can you do? And I think it's engaging them in a philanthropic conversation. A lot of individuals, a lot of professionals, CPAs, wealth advisors, trust and estates attorneys, and others, they don't tend to engage, at least initially, in that conversation. And what happens is many times these women and others will say, well, I'm not sure if I should be bringing this up or if they should be bringing it up. I'm not sure when we're going to have this conversation. And again, maybe the conversation never happens unless it's talking about being a beneficiary of an IRA or a life insurance policy or something that's more transactional. So it's really diving in and asking people, what do you care about? How do you spend your time? How does your family spend its time? What do you feel like you could be doing to make an impact in the world if you had more time? And just asking more open-ended questions, and people, my experience is people really seem to respond well to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think that's very important, what you talked about. But I also think for advisors to become more comfortable, talking above the line and below the line, you want to have conversations about the why, right? Yep. Why is this important to you, and how does this fit into where you want to be. But also understanding that wealth is different for every person, right? What they feel makes them a wealthy person may be different than what another person does. And being philanthropic really is fulfilling to people. And being able to help women achieve a goal that makes them feel wealthy is super important. So I'd say courage is a big word for advisors to adopt right now, is having the courage to go where they don't often go and start asking questions. These clients are friends, I would hope. So treat them as a friend and say, why is this important to you? And let's see if we can figure out how to make it happen.
So we recognize that there's this huge wealth transfer that's occurring and that it's going to women, which may be slightly different than what we've seen historically. But then when we just think of philanthropy, collectively as an ecosystem, we're going to have this challenge of we've served primarily men in philanthropy. Well, now we're going to women, but some may even question, did we even serve men well when we were looking at it? So what I'd like to get is a perspective of what you all think is missing from the philanthropic ecosystem, that if we identified it and did something about it, we actually could expand the impact of philanthropy across this country.
I think the ecosystem is something that more funders need to focus on, right? And in the nonprofit space, they talk about collaboration and innovation, right? But the funders don't know what that looks like. And if you've ever tried to get your family to go out to pick a restaurant, it's really hard. So you're asking these nonprofits, oh, we'll just work together, you're mission aligned. And I said, well, you get your family to that restaurant first, and then we'll start seeing if we can, as nonprofits, start collaborating. And the innovative piece is also very important. You need the full team to come together in order to innovate, right? You need to have the wealth managers, the estate planners, the attorneys, the CPAs, and the philanthropic advisors start having conversations. What would this look like? What could this be? And then from there, map out a plan. The other part is, trust-based philanthropy and not trying to control things from the top and allowing those who are actually doing the work to be bigger decision makers and having faith in them. Could you imagine being a fan and never believing your team is ever going to win? Can you imagine buying a ticket to a sporting event and believing they would never win and you would actually call plays from your seat? Well, in the philanthropic space, you want to give the players the ability to perform for you, and I think that's the trust-based piece of it that I'd like to see more of in the ecosystem.
Great.
I'd say, just to add on to that, corporations are part of the ecosystem. Foundations, family foundations, and the nonprofits themselves, right? It's all part of it. And when you think of an ecosystem, it means that everything is positively coexisting and feeding off each other and thriving. And I think that by bringing these different parts to the table for conversation, understanding what each party's looking for, that's going to be helpful in the grand conversation. And I don't know that we do that as well as we could. I know that the American College is doing a really good job with trying to convene those conversations. I was part of a conversation last fall with 50 people. I think you were there as well, George. And it really changes the dynamic when you say, this is my cohort. These are people who are really trying to make a difference in the world of philanthropy. Who are they getting to know? How are they part of something really positive in this country to help make sure that people are getting what they need and the ecosystem is fulfilled?
It is amazing for philanthropy to have been around for so long that there isn't more coordination, collaboration around the space. And I don't know if it's just a competitive side of this or what, but so you all have shared a little bit about what you think has to go in the ecosystem. One of the things that the college is trying to do when we look at our centers of excellence is, what is the void that a center of excellence could or should fill in the area that it's focused on? And so we have a Center for Philanthropy. And as we're going through, we're having a lot of discussions about how do we coordinate all of this. But really, what's the real void that you're seeing in philanthropy, whether it's those who are wanting to give or those who are helping figure out where they're giving? What's the big void that you think is happening in philanthropy?
me personally, I don't think there's enough practice space for philanthropy. I feel that it's often a conversation that's not started or even approached until later in life. And I think in any big decisions, the more time you have to sift through your feelings, that you're able to reach a better conclusion and be more confident in your decision. So through the Chartered Advisor and Philanthropy program, there's 3 components of it: the donors conversation, the wealth manager, the estate planners, and then the fundraisers, right? They're 3 different languages, but they're all trying to get to the same place, right? So just by sharing information across those silos, we have a greater chance of success as a whole. And I think, the centers of excellence, especially in philanthropy, to be an ongoing resource for all of us as we continue to evolve in the process and we go through our philanthropic learning curve. I think the college is going to be an integral part and a foundation for all those conversations to move forward.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'd say it's starting with what each party is looking for. What are donors looking for to be fulfilled? What is the conversation that, again, isn't happening? Do we know what they want? Right. And then talking to nonprofits, what are they looking for? Also, how are they part of a cohort of, is it the environment? Is it helping kids? Is it veterans? So collectively, how are they trying to move the needle as a unit? And also talking to, again, philanthropic advisors. What are they lacking? What do they still need to help move the conversation forward? What are corporations trying to do culturally within their own businesses to move things forward? What are foundations? What are the impact that they're trying to make? So it's really trying to understand what all these parties are looking for. And I know there's synergy in the middle, but if we're starting to convene these conversations more often through people with a CAP designation, people who are well-versed in the philanthropic conversation, being that convener, I think good things will happen. And as you say, we've been talking about philanthropy for a long, long time. I read that since the 1970s, philanthropy is going up and up and up, and yet it feels like we should be more mature 50 years later. We should have a more mature conversation around that. It should be more substantive, just like it is for retirement planning, education planning, and so on. Why is philanthropy not getting its share of that conversation as well?
So Mary, you mentioned something that, when you said it, I thought back of my coursework. So
Thank goodness.
We just finished
Yes.
it. It's what I'm supposed to do.
You're right.
Deanne will be proud of
That's
me.
right.
Won't she?
She's
Okay.
going to be proud.
You made a statement, if we could get to people earlier. And I have commented that my advisor really didn't talk to me about this kind of stuff. He talked to me about my estate plan. And he says, yeah, is there something you'd like to leave some money for some people? But it really wasn't a discussion around what's my desire or philanthropic approach that I'd really like to take because this is the impact. So in our class, we learned that most people really make this decision the last 3 to 5 years of their life. As we get closer, we start thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you could suggest that maybe if we know we need to start earlier, but most of us don't start earlier, we're waiting toward the end. Is there anything we could be doing to try to move that up? And I'm, when I think about our specialty training in CAP versus I'm just a financial advisor, should we as a college think about maybe incorporating a little bit more discussion around philanthropy as we're training them on the basics of financial planning? Maybe that's a suggestion, but I wanted to throw that out and get your thoughts because I agree with you on the timing, but I'm not sure because some of it's so specialized how we do that.
Yeah, Rick and I were talking earlier, right? And one of the things I learned early in my career, if you want to be successful with a client, you need to meet them where they are. So if our mission is to grow philanthropy and introduce it at an early age, look at who the wealth advisors will be in 15, 20 years, and then look for a system that's well organized. So we use high school and college athletics to teach philanthropy. Why do we do that, right? They're well organized. Mm-hmm. They understand diverse roles. right? Things we're already talking about. They have to collaborate. You do this, I'll do that, and then we'll try to accomplish a win. So these are skill sets that we're looking for in the philanthropic world. So why don't we go meet them where they are, and they still have this upside? Now, some may go on to a very tiny percentage, 2% may go on to getting their wealth from being a professional athlete, but 98% of them are going to be at Comcast, they're going to be at other big companies, they're going to be financial advisors, wealth managers, estate attorneys, and guess what they're going to know about? Philanthropy. And they're going to know about working together with people in philanthropy, and they're going to have experience with one charitable tool. They're going to be able to say, this is a donor advised fund that we used when we were in high school. So for us, that's at So Good Now, that's how we are trying to start that conversation earlier and making it a more community-centric activity versus something an individual does when there's not really any time for other people to learn from it.
I have two answers, I guess, to your question. One is I think about philanthropy starting in the home in the sense of a child notices that somebody doesn't have a home. They live on the street, and they might say, Dad, Mom, why does that person not have a house? And then you have a conversation about that. Or why is this person hungry? We have meals at our house. We don't worry about that. Why is that? And you start to have those conversations early on, and they play into, again, you can give money, you can give time, you can help at a homeless shelter, you can help at a food kitchen, and whatever those opportunities are as a family or as individuals as the child grows and becomes a teenager or becomes a young adult. So there are ways to do that and take advantage of things that are right in front of us in society. The second thing, I think from my CFP days, the 6 key areas of financial planning, I think there should be 7 key areas of financial planning. I think the 7th area should be philanthropy. And I don't say that disingenuously. I think that it's all part of the grand conversation. Right. If you can accomplish all these things and give back in whatever way makes the most sense to you, that should be part of the discussions we're having all the way through. And you can do that in a number of different ways. So if we were to redesign that system instead of 6 or 7, it forces the conversation, makes financial advisors say, well, it's right in front of us, let's talk about that.
Over the last 3 years, our country has gone through a lot when it comes to racial tension and diversity. And at the American College, we have launched a very successful program of donors of color, and which seems odd, but because all minority groups have always been givers, whether it be their church or something in their community, but we really have not focused. We probably have focused more on, can you write a check so we can put your name on the building, or we have this cancer share, whatever it is. But when we think about, we've got to think about women, and there's this demographic shift that's occurring. Do you think there's a difference when we look at some of the racial issues, some of the racial tensions that our country's had in the philanthropic space, that we should be doing more, that there should be something that's more specialized? Or is it, if we fix that ecosystem and some of the other things, that we think we'll be able to get all boats to rise? Rick, I'll start with you.
I think of it as equity in general. Are we using an equitable lens as we're addressing what's happening in society? So George Floyd being killed it sparked an absolute fervor, right? People were so upset about that. But the reality is it magnified something that's been there for a long, long time. Right. So I think there's the reactionary way that people respond to something like that, and people pop up with all the best intentions, try to create things that can be helpful. And does it last? Is it back to an ecosystem? Is it part of an ecosystem of change? And I have not seen anything that feels as cohesive as it should be 3 years later after George Floyd's been killed. Now, there are community foundations in my world that have been doing really good stuff long before George Floyd was killed. And it's definitely, as the cliche goes, it's a marathon and not a sprint. Correct. There's a lot of cultural work that needs to be done in communities, and we need to be sitting down and having conversations with individuals, not in sort of a reactionary way, but more about, this is going to help all of us. If we're sensitive to the differences that we have, and how positive that can be in the construct of society, then we will all be better for that. Recognizing those and building upon those, instead of just feeling like its ebbs and flows of the way we address this particular issue.
Okay.
I agree. So again, in sports, right, where do different races excel in different sports? So it's pretty exciting to be able to teach philanthropy to diverse groups. But leaning on what Rick was saying, we did a drive for athletic apparel. I noticed that all of the high schoolers in this zip code were wearing college apparel. And in this zip code, I never saw them in any college apparel. And so I said, well, let's make that part of our programming, especially during COVID when we couldn't have in-person give-backs happening. My 4-year-old granddaughter came over and she saw the piles of sweatshirts and she said, well, what are those? And I said, oh, those are for kids who don't have sweatshirts. Well, why don't they, right? Why don't they? And I think that as long as we keep asking, why don't they, and listening to the responses, we're going to find answers a lot faster.
So we talk about the racial tensions, we talk about women, but there's a couple of other issues out there. There's mental health that we're dealing with. None of us still know the long COVID impact on society. Are you seeing philanthropic growth in mental health space or in some other areas that really are moving away from gender or ethnicity, but just really focus on real challenge areas that are existing in our country? And I'm saying this, all due respect, separate from cancer or heart and stuff, but some of the newer things that we're seeing that are happening within society.
I'd say I'm seeing climate change being something that's front and center. I'm thinking of groups that are sourcing opportunities for funding, coming together and sharing ideas with each other. Mm-hmm. People who are moving a lot of money out into society as far as philanthropic impact. So climate change, mental health, as you said, really big. Obviously, the struggles that we all went through as a nation through the past few years. Women, again, focusing on women and equity, again, specifically around, are we using an equity lens as we look at the different ways that we can make impact? And also, I've also seen large sort of one-off opportunities. In other words, what's the big play? What's the big idea? What's something that's new and innovative that we could be funding as a group that isn't necessarily in a specific category? So those are the trends that I'm seeing.
Okay, Mary?
In our athletic population, mental health keeps bubbling up. And the statistics are that anxiety and depression in teens has just been going through the roof while volunteerism is going down in that same category. So research shows that when you actively volunteer or get involved in your community, it increases your sense of well-being. So have I seen other people outside of the young people asking us for mental health resources? No, but do they directly say, yes, we want them, we need them, and are they very comfortable sharing about it? Yes, they are. So I look to them as leaders in that space.
Okay, so here's my last question for both of you, all right? You have a magic wand. What would you use your wand for in the philanthropic space that you think would have the most impactful change for the good?
Magic wand to bring...
You can do anything you want to do with your magic wand.
All right. Well, I'd wave it to bring people together to have an open discussion, an open substantive discussion, leaving time to hear different points of view that lead slowly but surely to positive change. And time is of the essence. We were talking about that earlier. Time is one asset we never have enough of, and it eventually runs out. How can we take the time we have on Earth to come together at this time with the problems that are in front of us to build and take the strengths that we have and give that as a gift basically to future generations to say thank you for at least moving the ball forward this far to help us take it to what's next.
Great. Mary, we'll close with you.
Sure. Many hands make light work, right? So if I had a magic wand, I would tap at the top and I would say, if you really want to leave a legacy, pour some of what you have to give into these willing and able young people and give them power and a structure around those funds and let them learn and let them practice and let them grow so that in 10 years from now, we have risen up and we have a good handle on what's needed, and we have teams of people who are set to do really good work.
Great. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, George.